Hello. It's good to see you. Today we are going to be reading from a book about fishing tackle. And I've just picked a chapter at random. This is chapter 4, Sinkers and 10 Squids. Sounds like the name of a band or something. This chapter deals with sinker types, sinker sizes, costs, molding techniques, and 10 squids. T-I-N, not the number. I know when I say it, it sounds the same. Okay, for basic tools, we have an old cooking pot, a cheap gravy ladle or a large serving spoon, sinker or 10 squid molds, hot pads, gloves, and safety goggles. Helpful tools are a plumber's melting pot, a plumber's ladle, and heavy pliers. Sinkers can be molded just as easily as bucktail bodies by the methods described in the previous chapter. In one sense, they are more satisfying for the beginner, since once a sinker is popped from the mold and the excess lead left from pouring through the sprue hole removed, it's ready to use. Sinker molds come in the same styles as those for bucktails, namely in pinned, clamped, and hinged-handled molds. However, there are some differences. Not all sinker molds are made of aluminum, as are the jig and bucktail molds. The Reading Instrument Company has a complete line of sinker molds and several squid molds made from cast iron, with machined molding surfaces. Because the cast iron molds rust when not in use, they suggest a way to make the molds rust resistant. They recommend mixing equal parts of motor oil and kerosene, dipping the mold in the solution, and standing it on edge on newspapers for several days to drain before using. Down here we have sinker types. Many sinkers have molded in eyes, but some, such as pyramid sinkers, bass, also called dipsy or bell sinkers, trolling sinkers, and cushion sinkers, sinkers shaped like round pillows, have brass or swivel eyes that must be placed in the mold before pouring. I apologize for the blurriness. I tried this with autofocus and it just went bananas. It just didn't work. The eyes and proper swivels are available from the sinker supplier, tackle store, or mail order outfit. Up here we have a picture. Typical sinker and 10 squid molds. Let's see here. Top to bottom, 4 10 squid molds, egg sinker mold, 2 split shot molds, pyramid sinker mold, and bank sinker mold. Note the core pins in the egg sinker that form the holes in the sinker and the plates that form the slot in the split shot sinkers. In addition, there are egg sinkers, which require the use of rods, sometimes called core rods, to form the hole in the sinker. Split shot, ear grip, or clamp-on sinkers use a metal plate in the mold to form the slot into which the fishing line is placed and clamped in use. These plates and core rods are supplied with the sinker molds. The cost of aluminum sinker molds is about the same as that of the bucktail molds, between $2 and $5, although cast iron molds run generally higher, between $4 and $10. The eyes used in some of the sinkers are available in lots of 100 or by the pound or by 5 pounds. Prices vary from 35 cents to $1 per 100, depending upon the style, or $2 to $2.50 per pound. The low variation in the price per pound is due to the fact that the difference in the eyes is mostly a matter of size. The larger size eyes yield less per pound, even though the amount of brass used in making the eyes is the same for all sizes. Eyes for sinkers and 10 squids can also be formed on a homemade wire former. See chapters 10 and 13. Swivel eyes for dipsy, trolling sinkers are generally standard brass swivels, available for 25 cents to 35 cents per dozen. $1.75 to $2.50 per gross, depending upon size. Sinker molds that will make any size weight are also available, most molds making from 3 to 8 sinkers in one pouring. Sinker sizes. Some popular sizes of sinkers currently available include the following, though not all are from the same mold or even from molds of the same company. Pyramid sinkers 1 to 8 ounces. Bank sinkers 3/8 to 20 ounces. Egg sinkers 1/2 to 8 ounces. Trolling sinkers 1/2 to 12 ounces. Bass or bell sinkers 1/8 to 3 ounces. Snagless sinkers 1 to 7 ounces. Cushion sinkers 1 to 3.5 ounces. Split shot BB to size 4. Ear grip or clamp-on sinkers 1/16 to 2 ounces. Worm slip sinker molds, mostly 1/4 ounce. Molds with a greater size range may be forthcoming with the increased popularity of worm fishing for bass. Molds that require core pins include the egg and worm slip sinkers. Those that use plates to form a slot in the side of the sinker in which to place the line include split shot and ear clamp-on sinkers. Using molds with core pins or plates is no different from molding regular sinkers, except that the plates and pins must be removed after molding. The plates can easily be pried from the completed sinker, but pins are usually a little more difficult to remove. They can usually be pulled out with pliers or the core pin put in a vise and the sinker pulled away from it. Often it is easier to pull the pins before removing the sinkers from the mold. A light coating of soap on the core pin lubricates it slightly and makes the pin easier to remove. Just as in molding bucktails, there will be some flash on the sinker where the two mold halves come together, but usually it's minimal. Since the sinkers are not used to attract fish, the flash does not have to be removed unless its removal is desired for aesthetic purposes. The same applies to removing any other rough spots. And down here we have another picture. Core pins are best removed from sinkers with pliers while the sinker is still in the mold. Normally, the mold is kept closed, but is shown here open for clarity. The necessary eyes and hooks are placed in 10 squid molds, which have been smoked by a candle flame. Pouring molten tin into the mold. Once cooled, the squid can be removed from the mold and may have any flash or sprue cut off. One-piece molds for 10 squids are not commercially available, but because these lures are generally flat on one side, homemade one-piece molds can be made and used according to the directions in Chapter 13. Using an open-face mold for 10 squids is simple in that there are no sprue holes or hinged halves. There's just an open cavity the shape of the lure. But it is important to use a small ladle to control the pouring of the tin so as to not overflow the mold cavity. Position the mold near the melting tin, pour the mold rapidly, and allow to cool. Open-faced molds can be made with a small slot at one end to hold the hook in place, or the hook can be slipped into the molten tin and held in place briefly until the metal solidifies. Wear asbestos gloves or use pliers to hold the hook, since it will become hot as the metal cools. Did I mention this is an old book? It's actually fairly old. Defects in molded lures include hooks the wrong size for the mold, the top, misplaced hooks that cause excessive flash, second row on the left, lead becoming too cool before completing molding, second row on the right, too cool a mold or not hot enough lead, the third and fourth row. Typical home molded sinkers and squids. Clockwise from 12 o'clock, down here. Egg sinker, split shot, worm slip sinker, tin squids, pyramid sinkers, bank sinkers, and keeled trolling sinkers. Some tin squids are not molded with the hook in place, but instead have an eye molded at each end. As they come from the mold, they look like angular-shaped trolling sinkers. Add a split ring to one of the molded-in brass eyes and a hook to the split ring at the same time. In use, the line is tied to the eyes and a hook to the split ring at the same time. In use, the line is tied to the other eye and the hook swings free. The hook can be either a single or treble hook, left plain or dressed with fur, feathers, or attractor tubing. Brass wire can be used for the eyes, or the eyes can be molded in. Generally, since these are lures and presumably will have the pull of a fish on them, it is preferable to use a brass wire eye at each end of the lure so that there is no danger of the eye being pulled out and a fish lost. Eyes can also be formed in a homemade wire former. See chapters 10 and 13. Some fishermen prefer tin squids made of type metal, which is heavier than pure block tin, but does stay bright. Usually this is used in diamond jigs and squids that are jigged in deep water rather than cast from the surf, where it is sometimes necessary to bend them for best action. Type metal is hard and brittle and cannot be reshaped once the lure is molded. While a large variety of sizes of sinkers are available, the most weight is generally used by the surf angler, the river catfish and carp fishermen, the saltwater troller, and other anglers after big fish or plumbing deep waters. Sinkers come in up to 28-ounce sizes, although average sizes would probably be 8 ounces for trolling, 4 ounces for surf pyramid sinkers, and 2 ounces for freshwater bank sinkers. When you're molding sinkers or tin squids, be sure that enough lead or tin is at hand. Since most sinker molds have multiple cavities, up to 5 pounds of lead can be used per pouring in large bank or trolling sinker molds. A check of several mold companies shows that bank sinker molds use from 6 ounces to 2 pounds of lead, pyramid sinker molds from 6 to 20 ounces, trolling sinker molds from 4 ounces to 5.5 pounds. Sinker molds take a lot of lead, a hot fire, a large pot, and a large ladle if many sinkers are to be made at one pouring. Costs. As with sinkers, the cost of molding tin squids is minimal. Most take single hooks, costing about 2 cents each. If the tin or type metal can be obtained free, the only other cost is that of the mold. Assuming an average mold costing approximately $6, molding 100 tin squids will cost about $8, including the cost of both mold and hooks. Each lure will cost only 8 cents, exclusive of the metal. If you must purchase the metal, the price rises some, since the retail price of pure tin is currently about $1.50 per pound. But even then, the cost of a typical 2-ounce squid will only be about 28 cents, far less than the average store cost. Of course, as with all molded lures, the more the mold is used and its cost amortized, the cheaper the cost of each individual lure. The technique of molding sinkers and tin squids is easy. With the cost of lead sinkers constantly rising, it's kind of ironic for sinkers, molding your own not only makes sense, but saves cents as well. Starting with these easy-to-make tackle items is a natural for anyone who wants to cut the cost of angling while adding to the wintertime pleasure of tackle craft. We'll also read some from Chapter 5, Soft Plastic Lures. Molding processes, molds, molding plastics, other additives, general molding techniques, using rubber molds, steps in molding representative plastic lures, using aluminum molds, molding round lures, 2-piece and 1-piece plaster molds, molding in hooks and leaders, costs, and plastic lure kits. The basic tools you will need are rubber or aluminum molds, a melting pot, stirring sticks, molding plastic, and helpful tools would be a hot plate or a special melting stove. Many anglers who buy soft plastic worms are not aware that worms just this soft, just as good, and in a variety of sizes and colors can be made at home, but for a few pennies each. And while worms may seem to be the most popular of the soft lures for bass, soft plastic crickets, minnows, crayfish, frogs, tadpoles, salamanders, and other lures are made just as easily. Molding processes. There are two processes by which soft plastic lures can be made. One involves heating a metal open-face mold and adding a liquid plastic which cures to the proper consistency with heat. The second method involves heating liquid plastic to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, pouring it into a hard rubber, plastic, or similar mold, and allowing the lure to cool slightly before removing it from the mold. Caution: there is one important thing to remember in using all liquid molding plastics, as well as in handling the completed lures. The plastics will chemically attack most furniture finishes, as well as some tackle boxes and most paint and plastic finishes on lures. Be careful not to spill any plastic on anything but the scrap board used at the molding area. Do not allow completed lures to come in contact with anything except the inside of a plastic bag or worm-proof tackle box. This applies to commercially made soft plastic lures as well. Here are the tools and materials in molding plastic lures. Included are metal molds, rubber molds, 3 types of molding plastic, and a melting pot. Typical soft plastic lure molds up here. For the top row, we have worm molds. The third row, frog and insect molds. And let's see, fourth row, minnow, frog, insect, and crayfish molds down here. Fifth, sixth, and seventh rows are worm molds. And here. The top 4 rows are metal molds, and the bottom 3 are made of rubber. Molds. The molds vary depending upon the molding process used. The metal molds are usually aluminum and come in single cavity or multiple cavity models. Most are multiple cavity models and sell for about $1.50 to $2.50 each. Typical molds available include those for worms of all types from 6 inches to 9 inches, hell grommets, crayfish, mayfly nymphs, grasshoppers, crickets, dragonfly nymphs, stonefly nymphs, grubs, large and small frogs, shrimp, mayflies, garden worms, minnows, and similar lures. Most are rectangular and open-faced. All herders' molds are made in small aluminum squares designed to be used either over an open flame or in their mold heater. Some molds, such as the herder's mold for a minnow, have 2 cavities, one each for a right and left half of the lure. In practice, the 2 halves are molded together to form one single lure. The rubber and plastic molds are not heated, but are used with the heated liquid plastic. However, they are said to be able to withstand heat to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, well above the 350 degree temperature of the liquid plastic. Because the molds are of rubber and because they are used with very soft plastic, most rubber open-faced molds are made with a deeper, more rounded cavity than is found in an aluminum mold. Thus, a more rounded lure is possible with rubber molds than aluminum molds. These are certainly popular molds and come in a tremendous variety of sizes and shapes. Limit Manufacturing Company and Ottawa Supply Company list 46 rubber molds, while Lurecraft Company lists 205 molds. Maumelle, Carver Plastisols, MF Manufacturing, that's literally MF, that's what it says, MF Manufacturing, and Supersport also carry a variety of molds. These include worms of all sizes, from 4 inches to 16 inches, with standard heads, knobby heads, spiraled heads, round tails, flat tails, split tails, smooth bodies, segmented bodies, and all types of fins. Due to the current popularity of bass fishing, worms make up the bulk of the molds, but there are also molds to make spring lizards, eels, split tails for spinnerbaits, plastic pork chunks, grubs, crayfish, jigtails, mud puppies, frogs, tadpoles, and some lures that defy description. Many of these come in single cavity molds, selling at about $1.50 to $6.50 each, depending upon the size and type of lure. Some of the Lurecraft molds are multiple cavity, making it possible to make up to 24 catalpa worms, 6 9-inch bass worms, 12 small 4.5-inch worms, and 18 tadpoles. Multiple cavity molds from Limit are usually 3 cavity molds. They vary in price from $2.50 to $12, depending upon the type and size and number of cavities. In addition to the open face molds, 2-piece molds are available for making round, soft plastic lures. These will probably become more popular and readily available in the future, but at this writing, only Lurecraft and Supersport list the 2-piece molds, and all these are single cavity only. Molding plastics. The plastic used for both types of molds is similar and in some cases identical. While the various manufacturing companies retain the formulation of the plastic, it is variously described as Plasnil by Finney Sports, FleshX by Herders, and liquid plastic by other suppliers. It comes in liquid form in pint to 5-gallon quantities and in solid blocks sold by the pound. Both types of plastic are reusable, so any early mistakes in molding are not wasted but can be poured into the melting stock pot and used again. The liquid plastic is milky white, of a slightly thick consistency, which turns clear upon being heated. The manufacturers claim that it never goes bad and can be reused over and over again. Heat serves as the curing agent. No catalyst is needed or added. At 350 degrees Fahrenheit, it starts to turn clear and becomes thicker and syrupy. A color additive must be used to obtain the shade of lure desired. The block plastic is sold by the pound and comes in several colors, including transparent red, opaque red, blue, green, white, black, purple, and grape. Santee Lure and Tackle and Best Bet lures both carry block plastic. It has the advantage of not having to be mixed with a coloring agent. A piece is cut off, placed in the melting pan, heated, and poured into the mold. But the fact that it comes in colored blocks is also a disadvantage in that it is not possible to change the colors to get a lighter or darker shade than that of the plastic block. Color must be added to the liquid plastic, if anything other than a clear lure is desired. The colors come in 2-ounce bottles, which most supply houses consider enough for 1 or 2 gallons of molding plastic. Use care in adding colors. It's easier to add more color than it is to double or triple the quantity of plastic molding compound to dilute the color and get a lighter shade. The variety of colors available makes it possible to make any type of soft plastic lure in any color desired. One company lists the following as standard available colors for adding to their plastic: black, red, blue, avocado, amber, green, strawberry, raspberry, natural, lime, white, orange, violet, yellow, brown, purple, fluorescent green, fluorescent red, fluorescent yellow, fluorescent blue, fluorescent purple, fluorescent orange, fluorescent pink, phosphorescent blue, phosphorescent yellow, phosphorescent green, phosphorescent yellowish green, and pearl colors of sparkling white, yellow gold, warm bronze, and minnow silver. The phosphorescent colors glow in the dark like electric wall switch plates. They may be illegal to use for fishing lures in some states. Check before ordering or making lures from this material. Fluorescent materials are extra bright, just like some plastic rain suits, hunting jackets, and caps. In addition, the colors can be mixed together. Usually white is mixed with a color to obtain a lighter shade, while most colors can be made in pearl shades by adding a drop or two of the standard color to the sparkling white pearl color. Do not overlook the fact that most colors can be made lighter just by adding less color than is called for to the basic plastic. Other additives. Various other additives may be mixed with the molding plastic. For example, while the molding plastic is ideal for molding most plastic lures for most fishermen, it is possible to make the plastic either harder or softer. Generally, 2 ounces of hardener or softener to a pint of molding plastic is enough to change the consistency quite a bit. While most of the molding plastic has a slight buoyancy, plastic lures can be made higher floating by the addition of a special floating agent. A few drops in a small pan of plastic forms bubbles in the plastic lure as it cures, increasing the flotation. And as if the hardeners, softeners, and floating agents were not enough, there are also special flavoring agents that can be either mixed into the plastic or added to the polyethylene bags in which most plastic worms are stored. Licorice, wild cherry, raspberry, cheddar cheese, anise, and fish flavors are common. More and more fishermen are becoming aware that the scent of people, gas, oil, and other foreign scents can sometimes repel fish. Presumably, these flavors help disguise foreign fish-repelling odors. There is also a plastic lubricant in plain or fish scents that can be added in small quantities to the polyethylene bags in which soft plastic lures should be stored. It makes the lures slick, they are dry and rubbery feeling when they come out of the molds, and helps to hide the foreign odors and reportedly increases chances of catching fish. Prices for liquid plastic vary from $2 to $4 per pint, $10 to $20 per gallon. Solid plastic sells for about $2 per pound, equivalent to a pint. Color additives are a little more. Typical current prices run about 50 cents per 2 ounces, $1.50 per 8 ounces, $3 per pint. Phosphorescent colors are even higher, averaging $1.50 to $2 per 2 ounces. Softeners, hardeners, and flotation additives are about $1 per half pint. General molding techniques. The liquid or solid soft plastic lure molding material can be heated in several ways. Since the plastic must be brought to 350 degrees Fahrenheit to cure properly, it's important to be able to control the heat. Overheating is just as bad as underheating. While the material is not explosive, excess heat creates fumes and burns the material, destroying its color. And the fumes can be noxious. It is also flammable, so that heating over a gas flame is more hazardous than over an electric stove or hot plate. Some companies sell 2-burner hot plates just for molding. A suitable substitute for a burner can be made by building a support to hold an iron upside down, heating the plastic carefully by means of the controls on the iron. Otherwise, the kitchen stove is best for plastic molding. If possible, use 2 burners for molding soft plastic lures, since it is best to keep a large supply of melted plastic on one burner in a large pot, adding it to a small pot for pouring into the mold cavity. Pouring the thick, syrupy melted plastic is an art in itself, since it has a tendency to run down the side of the pan. Again, the danger of fire over a gas or open flame. A small molded cloth or block of the soft molding plastic, made by melting a small amount of plastic in a small pan, allowing it to cool and then removing it, will serve for wiping excess plastic from the pouring tip. Another type of molding is also possible with the use of liquid plastic, such as that currently available from Herder's and Finney Sports, poured into heated aluminum molds. The results are the same. The difference is that instead of pouring hot plastic into a cold mold, liquid plastic at room temperature is poured into the hot, about 350 degrees mold. Aluminum molds must be used for this type of molding. And I think we're going to stop there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and enjoying this together. Reading about molding techniques and sinkers and tinned squids. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again really soon.